It's Kyle here, and today I'll be reviewing The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which is book 1 of the Kingkiller Chronicles. Got this book last year as a Christmas gift, and boy am I glad I got it as a gift because it's an amazing book. I really enjoyed it. It is a fantasy novel, which is not a genre I read a whole lot. I don't really hate fantasy, it's just not one of my favorite genres, so I typically do not look out fantasy novels or series to read, so I just don't really delve much into that genre. But I'm really glad this book was given to me because I really enjoyed this book so much. Love the concept behind it, and how it sets up a trilogy. I should say I've only read the first book in the trilogy. I hope to read the second book fairly soon. I know the third book isn't out yet, but I'm really looking forward to reading that second book. So with that being said, let me give you a little basic setup for this book, which I really love the concept behind this book. So the main character in this book is kind of almost like this mythical figure that in his own life, he almost is assumed like a godlike position amongst the population. He's a extremely talented musician, magician, fighter. Like everything he does, he just naturally becomes the best at it. He's super charming, smart, athletic. Again, he's just one of those people that seems to be amazing in everything he does. And like I said, in his own lifetime, his abilities have almost been blown out of proportion, and people who have just stories about his achievements have been spread near and far, and they almost take on godlike qualities. So, people almost believe he's more of a mythical figure than an actual real person. And so the basic idea behind this book is, when we start the book, basically this individual has kind of went into hiding, and he's running actually a bar. He's a barkeep, and he's trying to basically get away from his fame and just maybe attempt to live a normal life and put everything behind him. He's seen a lot of death and destruction, and in our world we'd say he's going through post-traumatic stress disorder. He just wants to get away. But he is found and tracked down by an individual known as the chronicler, who writes the history of people, and he interviews them, and he writes the definitive history of this individual. He's very respected, so he's able to track him down, and so the character basically agrees to tell him his story, but he says his story will take 3 days, and basically the trilogies, each book is 1 day of telling his story, which I love the concept of the book being we're basically getting the story of this individual, this hero, from himself. And so he's able to, when he's going through and there's oh, I've heard it happen this way. No, this is how it really happened. This is what the person was actually like. Let me describe it to you. And kind of the stuff he focuses on is different than if it was being told from an outside perspective. He's, if there's a woman he's fell in love with, he's kind of focusing on the aspects of her that he fell in love with that, a person from an outside would have no idea what he's referencing, So I thought that was a really cool concept that's kind of being told by a storyteller's perspective. And throughout the story, they take breaks from the story and kind of go back to the current time where he's actually telling the stories and things are happening in the present day. So I love the concept and the plot of this book. So the first book, Name of the Wind, kind of focuses on his early life. Talks about his childhood, the band he grew up with, which in our world, you'd probably compare it to a band of gypsies or Roma. They're called different things in different countries, but, a similar type of people to that, where they don't really have a set home. They kind of travel around, and in this book, they mainly work as entertainers. They're kind of renowned as great actors and musicians and stuff, and he kind of grows up in a family, and that's how he becomes a very talented musician. And even in this troupe, as a young child, everybody in the troupe begins to realize, oh, he's insanely talented at a super young age already. Any job we give him, he instantly masters. So during his travels, his family comes across an individual who's kind of an expert in magic. And in this world, magic is real, but you need a lot of training to be able to do it. So it's not just accessible to anybody. It's basically in our world, going to medical school to kind of learn how to be a doctor. It's the same way, you have to get a lot of training to learn how to become a magician. And so this a magician kind of takes him under his wings and begins to teach him the secrets of magic. And he's quickly amazed because, much like his parents learned, this is one of these individuals, once he begins to learn something, he quickly masters it, and he kind of realizes, oh, this is a prodigy. He has a chance to be something very, very special. You know, like most fantasy books, there's a lot of adventures along the way and stuff like that. I don't want to get into a lot of specifics because I don't want to spoil any of the plot points. But the bulk of the book actually takes place. Eventually, he gets to the university where all magicians in this world go to, or people that want to be a magician go to study. And it's kind of like his adventures at basically college. Because it's more like a college. It's not like Harry Potter where you're going through kind of like elementary school and you kind of starting out as a kid. You're like, this is a college. You have to pay tuition. There's scholarships and all that type of stuff. So you're taking real world college education and kind of applying it to a fantasy world. A lot of cool adventures in this, a lot of funny interactions. I love his friends. He develops some romantic interest along the way. He has some rivals who hate him, who are trying to get him thrown out of the college. Love this setting and concept. I found it so entertaining and made for such a quick read because, like, each kind of chapter is almost like a different story in this person's life, and so it moves very quickly because it's almost like you're reading a collection of short stories instead of like a novel, but they all blend together perfectly. So I'd say, like, this is a fantasy book that's kind of light on the fantasy side. There's a lot of very grounded stuff in it. It's not like magic is ruling every aspect of the society, which I think is typically the fantasy that I like. Usually the fantasy I like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, I enjoy the parts of the books or the movies or the TV shows where magic maybe is just in the background, but it's not the driving factor behind the storyline. And to me, this is very much this book. This is kind of the kind of more in the background. He's trying to master magic, but at the same time, it's more about one-on-one human interaction that's really driving the storyline. I also love that the main character is a very flawed individual. That a lot of the the troubles and situations he gets himself into are mistakes that he's made either because he's inexperienced or he has a very inflated ego. He knows how smart and how talented he is, and he constantly thinks he is going to be able to outsmart people. But like he says, he kind of doesn't take into account how much maybe his attitude rubs people the wrong way, or even if he's more talented to somebody, if somebody's willing to dedicate themselves hard enough to a certain task, they can still ruin his life even if they're not as smart or as talented as him. So, so many times in books, like the main character is almost like this perfect individual, and if he does have flaws, it's not really, it's like, oh, he studies too hard, or he's a little clumsy, or it's like almost more charming flaws. He has actual flaws that are, bad character traits that gets him to trouble and causes trouble for his friends and loved ones and stuff like that. And to me, that was kind of something you don't typically see in books. I really enjoyed that. And I should say, I haven't said the main character's name because I honestly cannot pronounce this. So I decided instead of trying to pronounce it and butcher it, I'm just referring to him as the main character. I will say the one part of the story that I don't want to spoil is the reason that he wants to go to the magic school, basically, and really dedicate himself to that, is to try to track down a certain magical entity and group that caused harm to his family. And that's kind of the driving force behind at least this day one of stories. I can't speak to the other books. Book 2, I haven't read it, and book 3 is not out yet. But for the first part, that's kind of the driving force behind this, of him trying to master enough skills that he can basically avenge what happened to his family. But very interesting book, very unique, very entertaining, a lot of funny elements to it, a lot of sad elements to it. I was very fascinated by this book, and once I was done, I was like, all right, I'm fully committed. I want to read the rest of this trilogy. So I highly, highly, highly recommend The Name of the Wind. It's an amazing book. I'm so excited to read the next book in the trilogy. So in the comment section below, let me know, have you read this series? And let me know what your thoughts were. Hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please hit the like button. If you have yet, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and happy reading.